From Kym Vercoe, kymvercoe@hotmail.com, to info@bratguides.com. Sent Monday the 12th of January 2009. Subject, feedback, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dear Tim, firstly, let me thank you for your guide to Bosnia and Herzegovina. I travelled there last summer and had a wonderful time. For me, Bosnia is a beautiful, welcoming and overwhelming country. The recent past is still so evident, but the people and the country are resilient and so hospitable that I soon put my images of the conflict to the side and enjoyed the wonderful country I'd found myself in. And I found your guide very useful and heartening to read a guide whose author is just so fond of the country. I can understand the attraction. I've been meaning to write for some time as I had a troubling experience upon my return home, Sydney, Australia, and I wanted to share it with you. I visited Visegrad and was doing some reading about it on the net. Of course, there's no escaping the fact that when you travel to Bosnia, as in many other destinations globally, you will no doubt visit places where unspeakable atrocities have occurred. However, I was shocked and appalled to read that the spa centre, Hotel Villena Vlas, outside of Visegrad, was a notorious rape camp during the conflict. I stayed at the spa centre after reading about it in your guide, page 147. I have no idea whether you're aware of this history or whether you've decided there's not much point trying to rule out certain places, or indeed alerting your readers to the past history here. I also now realise that the very bridge I visited Visegrad to walk over was used as a site to massacre people. It's a difficult situation, Tim. I guess, having known what the site of Villena Vlas had once been, I would never have chosen to stay there. I find it hard to believe that places which were such epicentres of horror are still standing. I completely appreciate if you find my view naive. After all, I chose to travel to Bosnia with full knowledge of its past, and indeed, I no doubt inadvertently visited many places with a sorry past without even realising. This email is in no way an attack on you. I'm just interested to hear your view and what decisions you may have made about the guide, no doubt difficult. This is just a situation I thought I might like to discuss with you. I wish you all the very best for 2009. Kind regards, Kym. Good evening, everyone. In 2008, following a fantastic theatre workshop in Belgrade, Serbia, I jumped a bus to Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. For around 10 days, I bussed and strolled around that beautiful country, visiting popular tourist spots and drinking copious amounts of slivovitz and coffee. At the end of my trip, I visited the small town of Visegrad, inspired to see the 16th century Ottoman bridge that was the main character in a book I'd recently read, The Bridge over the Drina. It was a festival weekend, the town was buzzing and the hotels were full. I took a taxi to the Villena Vlas Spa Resort, a few kilometres outside of town. I spent a fun enough afternoon in the town, got to walk across and take photos of the famous bridge that had been a witness to centuries of history. The town appeared pretty intact to me in comparison to much of the rest of the country, where burnt out and shot up buildings were commonplace. Visegrad is only about 12 kilometres from the Serbian border, and given that it's quite clearly a Serbian town today, I figured it looked like it had been lucky and perhaps skipped any major violence during the war of the early 90s. Back at Hotel Villena Vlas later that night, I couldn't sleep, and the next morning I was terribly ill. So ill that I considered staying another night rather than risk the 8-hour bus ride back to Belgrade. But I dragged myself down to the bus stop, spent one last moment loitering on the bridge, bought a fizzy drink and fell asleep on the back seat. Cut to around 4 months later, an evening at my kitchen table, flicking through photographs and Googling places that I'd visited on the net. I type Villena Vlas and I click on Wikipedia. Villena Vlas from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Villena Vlas is a health spa that served as one of the main detention facilities during the Bosnian War. It is located 7 kilometres northeast of Visegrad. In 1992, the rape camp at Villena Vlas Hotel played a significant role in the ethnic cleansing of the area's Bosniak population. It is claimed that Muslim women brought to this camp many of them not yet 14 years old, were chosen to bear Chetnik children. The alleged wartime director of the Villa of Las Hotel is a pensioner still living in Visegrad. He has never been charged with any offence. After the war, Villa of Las was reopened as a tourist facility. I can't breathe. I really can't. I suffocate in a combination of confusion, anger, shame, and guilt. I only tell a few close friends whose common response is, well, you didn't know, it's not your fault. And although I know that logically, I can't seem to shake the feeling of having slept in a bed in a place where 200 women were raped for months on end and then killed. A rape camp. I'd figured I was pretty informed about Bosnia when I travelled there, but never for a moment did I imagine that the death camps had simply been cleaned up and reopened in their original purposes: schools, factories, hotels. Then I begin to find articles that discuss the culture of denial that is pervasive around these atrocities. They hadn't happened. They were the lies of Muslim propaganda. These women and their terrifying demise had ceased to historically exist. It stayed with me, and I felt this need to really do something. I wrote to the guidebook author. I started some rudimentary research around ideas of erecting memorials, none of which I had seen, to the thousands of victims of the Visegrad massacres of summer of 1992. I soon discovered that memorials to victims of the enemy on both sides had been made illegal. It took me a while and a rehearsal process for another show to realise that I could tell this story in the best way I knew how, in the theatre, and in that way create a theatrical memorial. I also made the decision to return to Bosnia and to Visegrad and to see the town with open eyes and create a memorial in Hotel Villa of Las, no matter how private, no matter how temporary. And in spring 2010, I did. In Sydney, later that year, I premiered the performance that tells this story, 7 kilometres northeast. It was a daunting undertaking, engaging with and discussing these issues in which I had no personal link and, thankfully, no experience of myself. Scene 24 of 7 kilometres northeast clumsily tries to articulate what was driving me to undertake such a journey. Here's an extract from that scene. It's called To Remember. In Bosnia, before I go back to Visegrad, I keep getting asked the same questions. Do you have a family history here? The answer is no, not that I know of. The second question, how can you not know what happened in Visegrad? I feel so stupid. I don't know, I say. I'm from the other side of the world. I've read a lot, but nothing specific about Visegrad. I read The Bridge over the Drina, and there are no memorials there like there are in Sarajevo. Well, actually there are. There are 2 memorials in Visegrad to Serbian soldiers. And the final question, why do you want to go back to Villa of Las? I don't have a ready answer. I don't know, for research. I'm doing a theatre show, I don't know. Mostly I answer, to remember. Fast forward to July 2011. I step off a plane in Sarajevo and I'm met at the airport by Bosnian filmmaker Jasmila Žbanić. She hugs me and she steps back and she says, I thought you were taller. In April that year, I'd had the wonderful opportunity to perform 7 kilometres northeast in Sarajevo. Jasmila had missed the show, but had been inundated with people asking her if she'd seen it. So much so, she borrowed the DVD from the local producer. Later that day, she wrote me an email asking if I'd be interested in adapting this story for film. It landed in my junk email box, and I only found it the day before it would have been deleted forever. We Skyped, and she told me she felt this was such an important and necessary story for her country that she wanted to start making it right now. I explained to her that I was a theatre maker, but didn't films usually take, I don't know, like 10 years to make? Her reply was vintage Jasmila. I am making a commitment to you to be crazy. If you commit to me to be crazy, then I believe we can do this. but we both must commit to be crazy. 2 weeks later, she put me on a plane, and 4 days later, we started shooting in Visegrad. It was an extraordinary experience, and I am forever grateful to have worked with such a passionate and incredible team of filmmakers. Our film, For Those Who Can Tell No Tales, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival last year and has since travelled to over 50 festivals worldwide. I've watched this story resonate with people all over the globe. Stories of forgotten and hidden histories, of historical denial of violence, of forgotten victims, are stories that are relevant to us all over the world. There are so many stories that get under my skin, that infuriate me and sadden me, and mostly I just continue with life as it was. I'll never fully grasp why the story of the women of Vila-Vlas and the victims of Visegrad grabbed me so profoundly, but I'm forever grateful that it did, and I'm honoured that so many people like you tonight have joined me in remembering them. Thank you.